As a deafblind traveler traveling the world, I've had my share of microaggressions. In fact, I shared a video with 5 stories of travel-related microaggressions recently on this YouTube channel. But then I was thinking, I don't want to only share negative experiences because I've had a lot of great, positive, accessible experiences as well. So today is going to be a totally positive video sharing 5 accessible travel stories. And these are examples of different types of accessibility or ways that I've been included in my travel. The first accessibility travel success story happens in Salento, Colombia. Salento is a very small town in the coffee region of Colombia. It was such a wonderful trip. And one of the things that I did there was go horseback riding. Horseback riding was actually accessible for me. And this is not something that I had thought about or that occurred to me, but it makes perfect sense. When I am hiking, I have to look down the whole time. If I'm moving, I have to look down. If I stop moving, then I can look up and engage with the world and see the beauty of the nature around me. But that takes away from my experience if I'm always having to look down. And the reason I have to look down is because my vision, my visual field is really narrow and I can only see what I am looking at. I have to focus on it. But if I'm on a horse, the horse takes care of all of that. So my mind was blown. This was also a sustainable travel experience because we went to a locally owned business to buy this tour. It also ended up being a private tour. So accessibility, accessibility, accessibility. So many things happening that make an experience accessible. Just being with me and my partner and the guide means that I felt fully safe and comfortable and I trusted the guide that he's gonna look out for me. The horse took care of all of the walking. So I enjoy the nature, the countryside. We went really far as well because the horse can walk a lot more than I can. We went all the way to a beautiful waterfall and it was just stunning. So I was really, really happy that I discovered this and I hope to do more horseback riding tours in the future so that my vision can focus on the nature and the things that I want to see all around me. It's another level of relaxing. Although, of course, you're on a horse, so I got nervous sometimes, but the horse was really good. And that was a wonderful, accessible travel experience. Story number 2 of positive examples of accessibility is a coffee experience that we did in Medellín, Colombia. What was great about this experience is that the person leading it taught us about coffee in a multi-sensory way and also in a multimodal way. He wasn't just talking at us, he also showed us a video and he had a tactile model of the coffee berry or the coffee fruit because there are different parts and layers inside. So we were actually able to take apart the model and interact in a tactile way with all of this, which I thought was a great way to learn. The video showed us the process of making coffee. We also got to do a whole coffee tasting, which I love. I love to be able to use my other senses other than hearing and vision. So smelling the coffee beans, learning about the different types of coffee, the types of, the roast, dark, medium, light roast. We learned that dark roasting is actually not recommended. And when you drink dark roast coffee, you're often drinking a lower quality coffee that has been roasted, even burned, so that you don't know that it's low quality. So that was news to me. And so I loved trying to identify the notes, the tasting notes of the different coffees and seeing the difference between when you would smell the dry beans and then you would add or grind them and then add some hot water and you do the whole process. So that was really accessible. I don't think I often encounter tours like that or experiences like that where attention is really paid to how can you teach and show and share in multiple ways. So a food experience like that is a great idea because then you also engage your sense of taste, which is always fun. Story number 3 is actually a little bit similar. It takes place in the Chocolatarium in Edinburgh, Scotland. The Chocolatarium was a place where I learned all about the process of making chocolate, and I even made my own chocolate, which I got to season and flavor. This tour was exciting and accessible because there were also different components to the learning. We had a tour guide talking to us. We also were able to look at real machines that make chocolate and see how the machines work. And the guide did a demonstration of that. Then making the chocolate ourselves was fascinating, where we got to actually pick different things. Like, I know I made my chocolate a little bit spicy. You were able to put different mixings into it, and then they put it to cool. So the chocolate experience was amazing for me because I actually really do love chocolate. Another aspect of it was a tasting. We got to try different types of chocolate and pick the ones that we wanted to taste. Also in that experience, there was a lot of information up on the walls. It was very engaging visually in that way too, where we also moved from one room to another room and then to another room, which I think is helpful for attention. When you're in that one space the whole time, it's not as engaging. You might get bored, you might lose interest, but it felt like we went on a journey through the space, and then we got our chocolate at the end. So I think a common theme with those two is doing a food-based experience, doing a learning experience where you don't just do one thing like a tasting, but you're also engaging with your hands in some way, learning about a whole process. I think I find that really interesting, and a lot of other people do too. Number 4, I have to shout out a recent experience of mine, which was getting a tour of the Tinguely Museum in Basel, Switzerland. This was part of a paid partnership trip, but I think it really deserves another shout out because our tour guide was so considerate, thoughtful, and accessible to me. Here are a few of the things that he did. The basics for tour guides are that I need them to face me, to speak clearly, slowly, loudly enough, and make sure that I can read their lips. Those are the basics. And that is hard to do when you're in a large group tour. People don't often think about, oh, I'm pointing somewhere and I'm turning, or I'm shifting this way and the people on this side of the circle can't hear me or see me. So it is really hard to kind of get a very accessible experience in a large group setting. That's why private tours or small groups are much better, not only for me, but for many other people. This one was a private tour, so it was just me and my partner and our wonderful tour guide. The other thing that was really accessible about this particular tour was that the tour guide brought out the different tactile models and also just visual models to teach me how the art works. So if you didn't watch this video about my experience in Basel, John Tinguely was an artist who would make things that moved, whether it was on a painting or it was a large structure, and he electrified them. So you could push a button and they would turn on, and then you have things spinning and you have things interacting with each other in that space or making noise. And it's very unique. It's not something that you see often. And he's also had some outdoor art pieces that shoot water, that operate like fountains, but are so creative. He also brought out a piece of paper that was a tactile kind of representation of an art piece that I was looking at. So this piece was so big, there was no way that I would have been able to touch all of it. So this was kind of like a scale model, but it was 2D on a piece of paper that was tactile and had raised elements. I had never experienced that in a museum, and it was really, really informative for me, especially because the room that piece was in was kind of dark. So I didn't get a great sense of what it was. So that paper was really, really good. And obviously just being able to interact with the art in different ways is another way of just feeling that you're more included and you're more connected. So one of the pieces, you can actually walk on them. It does have stairs, so it's not accessible for everyone, but I was able to get on it and see it from a different vantage point. So I really loved the tour guide. There was also a scale model outside of the building because we learned about the architecture, why it was designed that way. It had to be very big to house these huge pieces, and that model was very helpful. So when we're thinking about tour guides, there's so many things that people can do to be accessible, to make it interesting, informative, and also help people feel connected to the art that might have disabilities or different ways of learning. So I really loved what our tour guide did there, our museum guide. I don't know if I should call it a tour guide, but he was fabulous. So that's a bit of museum accessibility. The fifth story of our accessible success stories was a pasta making experience in Tuscany, Italy. So I did this experience with my partner and my parents, which was so fun. What happened in the experience was that we went to a property out in the Tuscany countryside. We participated in making a whole meal, but we also got to relax. There was a kind of a beginning appetizer moment with wine and beginning snacks and cheese and things like that, which is great because we had to travel out to the countryside to go there. So that was very smart of her to give us some food and some nibbles before making us cook. And then making pasta was very tactile, very hands-on. It's all, you don't have to rely on your vision to do a good job. And it's just fun. We made the pasta, dough. I don't know if it's called dough, I think so. And then we rolled it through a crank. And my dad was the best one, I think, out of all of us at getting it very thin, but still substantial enough to withstand the cooking. It was super fun. This being involved in cooking, it was an experience that is relaxing and connective. I also want to point out it was a private experience. It was just us. So obviously that requires some privilege to be able to afford to book a private experience, and not everyone has that privilege. So I do want to acknowledge that. It's really important. But I loved it. It was so much fun. And it also was nice too because everyone could take their moments of rest. You didn't have to be active the whole time. It wasn't like a walking tour where you're walking for hours in the heat and the sun. We were in a climate controlled environment. There was not a lot of walking involved, and there were different phases to the experience. And we got to eat. We got to eat 2 times. We had our snacks at the beginning, and then we had the full meal with this incredible pasta that I would love to just teleport back into that dining room and have this pasta again. And we also had a fried sage leaves, which had never even occurred to me as a thing, as a dish. But now that I've had it, I will never forget it. There you go. Those are 5 positive examples of accessibility that I've experienced when traveling the world as a deafblind traveler. It is important to remember that it's not all bad out here. When we're traveling, we're not always encountering ableism and microaggressions. There are these positive experiences as well, and there are people that are ready to receive us as disabled travelers and present us with a more considerate, thoughtful experience that is more accessible. And shout out to everyone who has been doing that and learning how to better provide these experiences for disabled travelers and make things accessible not only for us, but for everyone. I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about these travel adventures, and stay tuned for the next video about BlindishLatina's accessible travel adventures. If you want to see more videos on inclusive and accessible travel, subscribe to BlindishLatina and let me know all your questions in the comments, and I will see you next time.